people is what seems to be working for us. I mean, we haven't found anything, but to keep calling the hospitals, to fill out the missing persons report, and to bring in all the things they're asking for, like pictures and fingerprints and hair samples, and to just keep doing it. And it's hard, but you got to keep calling. They're updating lists constantly. Every couple of hours, they update lists at all the hospitals, and to just keep trying and to get their name or their picture out there for people to see. That's the only thing that I can help for.
Where were you, Naomi, when this happened?
I was actually at home.
And you?
I was getting ready to go to work.
And how did you find out about it? And
my sister called to tell me that my brother-in-law was okay, but that she doesn't know more than that. And that was before the second plane crashed.
And your immediate reaction, I can imagine, was one of horror.
It was of tremendous fear to make sure that everything was okay with both my sister and my brother-in-law.
Well, we certainly wish you good luck and Godspeed. Naomi Konovich searching for her brother-in-law in New York, where my colleague Aaron Brown is now, with more information on this terrible story. Aaron?
In fact, you could take her story and multiply it by 10,000 or more. As we look behind us again, we can't see any longer. Just go ahead and zoom past me here. They don't need to see me now. We can no longer see building number 7, the third of the buildings that collapsed. I'm not sure, to be perfectly honest, that this is anything more than a shift in the wind. It just feels to me like the wind is kind of moving up from the south now, and this cloud of smoke and dust and asbestos and who knows what else, frankly, moving kind of directly in front of us. In the World Trade Center, of those 50,000 people who went to work there, many of them were involved in the business of money. Analysts, investment bankers, brokers, and the like. The largest tenant, Morgan Stanley. Our colleague, Lou Dobbs, the anchor of Moneyline, has been working that part of the story, and Lou joins us now. Lou?
Aaron, thank you. As you say, 50,000 people worked in those towers. The tragedy only now beginning to be counted in terms of human life that has been lost, but certainly there will be thousands, not only in the towers themselves, but in buildings surrounding. And Morgan Stanley, the largest occupant of those towers, is some 2,500 people working in the South Tower in the mid floors, some 11 floors there. Those 2,500 employees have been certainly the focus of management at Morgan Stanley over the past 24 hours. And Phil Purcell, who is the CEO of Morgan Stanley, had some good news for employees of Morgan Stanley and for everyone here in New York today.
Miraculously, I'd say, we had 2,500 people in 1,000 people in World Trade Center 5. It appears the vast majority got out safely. We have some missing people that we are looking for. We have all efforts trying to track down everybody that we know who worked in the building.
Well, that search for other people in that building and the other tower and the surrounding buildings will, of course, go on. And the tragedy is beginning to mount for all of us who work in New York and live in this area. Already we have learned of friends and colleagues who have lost their lives in this tragedy. And as we begin to count the human toll and as it exacts its pain on all of us, we are also looking at a community that is resolved to get back to business as quickly as possible. At this hour, the New York Stock Exchange, the principal brokerages and banks in this town, are meeting at the New York Stock Exchange. Dick Grasso, the chairman of the New York Stock Exchange, leading that meeting. Their efforts to determine when and how soon they can get business back to some semblance of normal. The desire by everyone I've talked with in this town is that business return to that semblance of normality as soon as possible, certainly tomorrow. But as you look at that devastation behind me, what was once the World Trade Center and all the debris and the devastation that surrounds it and the pain and the loss of life, there are also some very practical issues involved. They trade $43 billion a day at the New York Stock Exchange, and that huge amount of money also is supported by operations groups, SIAC and DTC, the clearinghouses, and they are in buildings, in part, what was once the World Trade Center, but in buildings surrounding it. And no one knows at this point how secure those buildings are when perhaps they themselves might collapse. So that will be an important part of this determination that this group of business and financial leaders are meeting to resolve at this hour.
We take you to CBS America now and down to the ground level search at the World Trade Center.
All of this rubble at this point.
Ed, no one really is willing to tell us that they have no hope, but everyone here acknowledges that there's very, very little chance. We're in an area, Ed, between the two towers, what were the two towers. There is a massive debris here. There are no signs of life, haven't been any signs of life in this area for the past several hours. One fireman told us candidly, look, for all intents and purposes, this isn't a rescue effort anymore, it's a cleanup effort. Now, there are hundreds of volunteers here standing by, waiting to save anyone that can be found. I've got an army of doctors and nurses just off to the left, standing by and waiting. So no one's going to say never, but everyone understands what the reality of this scene is.
Thank you, Scott. The latest information we have is that the FEMA has confirmed that they've pulled 40 bodies. 40 bodies have been recovered from the rubble at the World Trade Center. 1,600 people have been treated for injuries. They expect this cleanup to take anywhere from a month to the next 2 to 3 months. Let's go to Bob Orr now in Washington for more news on the air transportation system. Bob?
Well, Ed, in fact, maybe we do have some news. We've got a clarification now that makes some sense from the Department of Transportation. I just got this. I'm going to have to read part of it to you, but Secretary of Transportation Mineta basically has decided to allow a limited reopening of the aviation system, but for one reason only, and that is to allow those flights that were diverted yesterday to go on to their original destinations. Now, as I understand the order, what will happen is passengers who were on the flights yesterday, and only those passengers, no new ones, will be allowed to go back to the airport they were diverted to, reboard the aircraft, and then go on to their original destinations. Beyond that, the temporary ground stop, that is the shutdown of the system, will remain in effect indefinitely. Airlines will be allowed to move around empty planes, but not with passengers on board. And then finally, once all of the new security measures go in place and the system is reopened, these are some of the things that passengers will notice. There will be increased searches of airplanes and airports. There'll be no more curbside check-in. You will no longer allowed to be check-in from, say, an off-airport location like a hotel. There'll be passengers only in boarding areas. There'll be no parking near terminals, and all auto traffic near terminals will be severely restricted. So just to recap, for today at least, there may be some flights that take off, but these are flights that had to be diverted yesterday. The only people on those flights will be people that did not get to their original destinations, but no new passengers. Airlines also can move around empty planes, and then we all shut it down again until all the security measures can be ramped up to a point where the aviation authorities are satisfied that all the necessary precautions have been taken. Ed?
Bob, one quick question. So someone who was on a flight, say, from Texas to New York and was diverted to Nashville, will that person be able to continue on the flight to New York, or does that person have to go back to Texas?
No, my understanding is that person, wherever he or she was diverted to, can go to that airport, reboard the original airplane, and go to their original destination, but only that person, no other passengers, Ed.
Thanks, Bob. Let's go now to Russ Mitchell in Midtown Manhattan. Russ, what is the scene there now?
And while parts of New York still look like a ghost town, there are signs here in Midtown Manhattan that things are slowly returning to normal. I'm standing at the corner of 59th and 5th in what is considered, of course, Midtown Manhattan. There's Central Park over there. And you can see folks are out and about. These are tourists. These are native New Yorkers going about their business. Now, the traffic here is not nearly as heavy as it would be normally on a Wednesday afternoon, but it's a lot better now than it was earlier today. To borrow a phrase, a few hours ago, you could have rolled a bowling ball down the street and not hit anyone. Let me walk over